Welcome to another screencast where this time we'll be discussing deglutition, which is the act of swallowing, as well as peristalsis and segmentation. So by the time you're finished watching this, you should hopefully be able to describe and explain the mechanism of deglutition. That is exactly sort of what's happening here when we swallow a food bolus, and B here, the mechanism of propulsion, and talk about peristalsis as well as segmentation. So we've been talking about the digestive system here, of course, and the food bolus goes into the mouth here, as well as having any sort of secretions out of the salivary gland. So all of that is going to mix here together and then be swallowed down the esophagus and end up down here, of course, in the stomach. All right, so we're going to talk here about the act of swallowing here, or deglutition. So deglutition involves the tongue, the epiglottis, and peristalsis of the esophagus, as well as the muscles of the pharynx and the uvula. So static image here from left to right of the food bolus here in the mouth in green. Notice that the uvula and the epiglottis are not covering the opening here to the nasopharynx or to the larynx here yet, but when the tongue pushes the food bolus back, the muscles here of the pharynx will also contract and lift up. The uvula then closes off the oropharynx, or sorry, the nasopharynx, and the food bolus is in the oropharynx here, and the epiglottis then is pushed down and covers the larynx here, and so that the food goes down the esophagus and not down the trachea. And then as the food bolus passes down into the esophagus, the smooth muscle lining the esophagus here will begin to contract in peristaltic rhythmic waves, and the epiglottis, you see, is returned back to its position, as well as the uvula and the soft palate. Okay, running the PowerPoint and clicking on these animations is going to put this all into action for you. This first one is a cartoon, and these 2 and 3 here are pretty wild fluoroscope images of individuals swallowing. And you can watch the food bolus go down. It's pretty cool, so I recommend clicking on those. So again, here's just the static images again of the yellow food bolus. Right, you see here a little bit better image of some of the muscles of the pharynx here that are going to contract as the food bolus then is pushed by the tongue backwards, and those muscles then will also aid in moving the uvula, the soft palate up. Food bolus pushed back into the oropharynx. You see that the epiglottis here is beginning to be pushed over the larynx. There it goes over the larynx, and the food is then pushed down into the esophagus, and then peristaltic rhythmic contractions follow that. So I'm just go all the way back to the beginning here and made this sort of so you can see the image. We'll do that a little bit quicker, and you can see that. Just forgive me, it's late and I'm playing with PowerPoint here. So there goes the food bolus. Peristaltic contractions of the smooth muscle. Once that bolus gets into the esophagus begins to undergo peristaltic rhythmic contractions to push the food bolus here as an image from left to right. Right? And that food bolus is propelled down the esophagus there. Okay. Once it reaches the stomach, after the esophagus, the stomach will then have wave-like contractions that will take that food bolus and begin to mix it and segment it, and then also kind of dilute it. So you see here that the food bolus here, the secretions are kind of a darker green, and then they're going to be mixing here and form this lighter green. And so you can see that happening here as well. Here's the secretion of the food up top, and there the contraction of the waves will mix that, churn that up, and get it to become a little bit more dilute. And this is, of course, what's happening in the stomach as well as in the small intestine, so we'll see this again later on. Okay. So just a quick one there about the mechanism of deglutition, and a little bit about the mechanisms of propulsion, peristalsis sort of going in one direction, and then the segmentation here is sort of mixing and churning going back and forth. Ultimately, then peristalsis will push that from the stomach into the small intestine, from the small intestine into the large intestine, etc. Okay, thanks for listening, and bring your questions to class.